Hey, you kids. So, the last two Windows versions were kinda mid. Well, say goodbye to the mid Windows versions because Windows 3.0 is actually pretty peak. So, let's take a look at Windows 3.0 and its history. Windows 1.0 and 2.0 were purely real mode environment systems. They were constrained to only 640 kilobytes of memory, which limited the complexity and number of programs running. Even the 386 versions. Well, two men had enough of that. Their names were Murray Sargent and David Weiss. In 1988, they both worked hard to get the 386 version of Windows 2.1 running under protected mode. Mr. Weiss showed Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer's the proof of concept, and the project was approved to become the next Windows version. The first confirmed beta build is build 11. The only mention we have of it existing is the files calpren.c, calren.c, and calcmd2.c from the source code of Windows NT 3.5 build 782. The first available build is build 14, compiled on February 22nd, 1989. It has a fresh and funky new color scheme, along with a watermark in the corner. This build is very buggy and requires a specific version of MS-DOS, else it won't work. It also doesn't include any of the apps and accessories that Windows 2.x had. This build was leaked online in 2015, when someone on the beta archive saw that their neighbor owned build. Next up is build 33, compiled on July 27th, 1989. This build doesn't have any installer, so copying all the files over manually is necessary. This build supports all three modes from the final version, although with different names. 286R is real mode, 286p is standard mode, and 386p is 386 enhanced mode. This is the first build known to introduce the Windows 3.0 look and color scheme with the pseudo 3D buttons. It's also the last build to use the MS-DOS executive. Thank God. A video uploaded by Craig Brocksmith, the developer of the calculator application Windows 3.0, shared a video on June 8th, 2020, showcasing an alleged build 48, compiled sometime in 1989. Aside from the version numbers, copyright dates, color scheme, and wallpaper, this build is identical to build 55. This build was later proven fake when build 52 was resurfaced after being lost for 34 years. Build 52 had the same calculator version, but an earlier terminal version. Why Craig decided to make a fake build to try and fool everyone is unknown, but maybe he had a grudge against the beta archive and wanted to mess with them. Build 52 was compiled on December 13th, 1989, and is the oldest available build to introduce the Program Manager and File Manager, which we'll talk about when we get to the actual OS. We have a new boot screen, which is very close to the final version, although the color's so different. Build 55, compiled on January 2nd, 1990, is mostly the same as Build 52, although the paintbrush application is kinda funky. Build 59 was compiled on February 2nd, 1990, and introduces the final boot screen and removes the paintbrush warnings. After numerous release candidates and 3 months of work, the RTM build was compiled on May 1st, 1990, and released publicly on May 22nd, 1990, to critical acclaim. Users and critics alike loved the new Program Manager. Right before its release, out of the 40 million installed personal computers, only 5% of them ran 1.0 or 2.x. But after a week of its release, it became the top-selling business software. Somewhere around November 1990, it sold 2 million copies. Quite impressive. This version is considered the start of Microsoft's dominance on the computer space. Windows also became very popular among businesses. Brian Livingston from InfoWorld magazine said in October of 1991 that a company with no PCs that run Windows is almost like a company without a fax machine. However, some critics in the FTC criticized Microsoft for trying to dominate the application market by luring competitors to develop their software for OS2 instead of Windows. While Microsoft was indeed suggesting that application developers develop for OS2, they intended Windows 3.0 to be a low-end alternative to OS2, with Bill Gates referring to OS2 as the operating system of the 1990s. Windows 3.0 was also meant to be the last version of Windows. As if. The investigations into and eventual suing of Microsoft led to a settlement on July 15th, 1994, where Microsoft agreed not to bundle software packages with their operating system. This event marked the very first time Microsoft was investigated for anti-competitive practices. On October 20th, 1991, Windows 3.0 with multimedia extensions, often called Windows 3.0 NME, was released to OEMs. This extension pack introduces screensavers, CD support, the first version of Microsoft Windows Media Player, an updated control panel, and some goofy-ass sounds. These features would be present in Windows 3.1 by default. On December 31st, 2001, Microsoft killed off Windows 3.0, along with 1.0, 2.0, 3.1, 95, and MS-DOS. So now, let's take a look at the OS. Windows 3.0 has a very blue installer that will be used up until Vista. After inserting Disk 2, we're greeted by a graphical setup. After going through that and rebooting, we're back at the DOS prompt. We could just type Win to boot into standard mode, or type Win/R to boot into real mode. This boot screen is so much different than Windows 1.0 and 2.x. Gone is the boring blue background, and in comes a stylish purple background with a subtle Microsoft logo. When we boot into the desktop, we're greeted with the new Program Manager. This is such an upgrade to the MS-DOS Executive. No more searching through dozens of iconless file names just to find a program or file. Now, all the programs are in little groups and you can find a file through the new File Manager. File Manager is actually really solid in Windows 3.1. In 3.0, however, it's honestly not that good. Still an upgrade from the MS-DOS Executive, but it's really not that much better. I mean, every time you have to open a new folder, the contents of the folder show up in a new window. I really hate file managers that behave like that. Not to mention that if you want to display the contents on the root of the drive, you have to double click on the drive. This version of File Manager is garbage. Well, at least the minimize and maximize buttons have new icons. Windows 3.0 also introduces Recorder, Print Manager, and of course, Solitaire. Recorder is a tool that allows you to record your inputs and lets you play them back. Print Manager is an application that allows you to do something printers. And Solitaire is Solitaire. This is also the very first version of Windows that allows you to change the desktop background. It's been a recurring thing ever since. And that is Windows 3.0. The first version that I could consider pretty solid. But there are some issues that I would like fixed, like, you know, the file manager. Oh hey, would you look at that?